Two presidents in one region. That's kind of crazy, right?
It's definitely a head-scratcher.
Well, it's happening right now in Tigray, Ethiopia. We're doing a deep dive on the Tigray People's Liberation Front, you know, the TPLF.
For the TPLF?
Yeah, and they're very messy, very public power struggle.
And it matters. This isn't just inside baseball.
No, not at all. This is about real people's lives. And frankly, this whole thing could determine whether there's peace or more violence in a really fragile region.
Absolutely. And what makes it even more interesting, right, is that we're talking about a group, the TPLF. They were basically the power in Ethiopia for decades.
Right, the top dogs. So how did they go from that to, basically being at each other's throats?
Well, I think you got to rewind a bit, right? Back to 2018, Abiy Ahmed comes to power. Big changes in Ethiopia, reforms, a whole new way of looking at things. And the TPLF, well, let's just say they weren't exactly thrilled with everything.
So they were okay with losing some of that power?
Not really, no.
Yeah.
Especially the faction led by Debretsion Michael. They saw these reforms as like a direct threat. And then, of course, you have the Tigray War that breaks out in 2020.
Yeah, that was just horrific.
Brutal. And that really blew things wide open within the TPLF. Disagreements about how to fight the war, then how to make peace. All of a sudden, the cracks were really showing. And that's where Govt, he was actually the interim president of Tigray at the time, he becomes the leader of this faction that's really splitting off.
Okay, so the war ends, but inside the TPLF, things are just getting started.
Exactly.
And then September of this year, things get wild.
Yeah, September was that was a big month. The TPLF Central Committee, they're the ones aligned with Debretsion. They vote to just kick Reda and his whole cabinet out. Gone. They accused him of, well, a lot, actually. Undermining the TPLF, messing with the peace agreement.
So wait, for a while, Tigray had two different governments?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And geographically, it splits the region almost perfectly in half. You've got Debretsion's faction controlling the north and northwest, and Reda in the south and southeast.
Wow. I mean, imagine living there. Who do you listen to? Who's actually in charge? It's incredibly confusing, I imagine.
It would be incredibly unsettling, yeah. Especially for a region that's just been through something as traumatic as the Tigray War. You're trying to rebuild your life, and you don't even know who's running the show. Healthcare, education, even just feeling safe in your own community, all of that is thrown into question when you have two groups claiming to be the legitimate authority.
It just feels like there's this constant tension, this uncertainty hanging over everything. So how does this split actually play out on a local level? I mean, Tigray has these local administrative zones that were Balsteritis, right?
Right.
What's it like for people in those communities?
Imagine, you're in a small village, a rural community. For your whole life, you look to your local leaders, your wardo officials, for guidance, for support. But now those leaders are caught in the middle. They're getting conflicting orders, conflicting information from both these factions claiming to be the real TPLF. Some local leaders might pick a side, which just makes the divisions even worse. But others, they might try to stay neutral, just try to keep their heads down.
And in the meantime, nothing gets done.
Exactly. It creates this power vacuum, and essential services can't function. It's a recipe for chaos.
So Reda gets ousted. Does he just walk away?
Oh, no. Reda says he's the leader of the real TPLF. In fact, he's even announced that he's going to hold his own party congress.
So it's a showdown then?
It's shaping up that way, definitely.
Yeah.
You've got Debretsion's side trying to consolidate power, and you've got Reda, who seems determined to prove that he's the legitimate leader. And all this while the federal government is watching very, very closely.
Right, because they could step in, right? Try to mediate, maybe.
They could, but it's risky. If they're seen as taking sides, it could make everything 10 times worse.
So you've got the future of Tigray hanging in the balance.
A region that's already been through so much, it really makes you wonder.
Yeah. What happens next? It's almost like having two presidents is the least of their worries. I mean, there's just so much going on under the surface here.
Oh yeah, this whole thing with Abiy Ahmed and these reforms, it's like opening Pandora's box a little bit.
Right, like all these deeper issues in Ethiopia, they were always there, but...
Exactly. And you can't forget about ethnic federalism. That's a big part of this story.
Okay, yeah, remind me about that.
So basically, Ethiopia, for a long time, they divided power among different ethnic groups.
And the TPLF, they were at the top of that system.
Totally. They were running the show, calling the shots. So when Abiy Ahmed comes in, talking about unity, about getting rid of the old ways, well, the TPLF, they felt that.
They felt threatened.
Big time. They saw their power slipping away, and they didn't like it one bit. And then the war starts.
2020.
Yeah, and it's like everything that was simmering under the surface, all the disagreements, the resentment, it just explodes.
So even before they officially split, the TPLF was already...
Oh, they were coming apart at the seams.
Yeah.
The war just, it just sped things up, made it impossible to ignore the problems any longer.
It's like this whole thing, the power struggle, the war, it's all just...
It was a giant mess.
Yeah, pretty much. And we're still trying to figure out what it all means. You mentioned earlier the federal government is watching this really carefully.
Like hawks.
Right, because they could step in. I mean, couldn't they try to, like, mediate, play peacemaker?
Maybe, but it's a tough spot to be in. If they try to intervene and get it wrong, it could blow up in everyone's faces.
So what do they do?
Good question. It's a real gamble either way, and they've got a lot to lose. I mean, this isn't just about the TPLF anymore. This is about the future of Ethiopia.
And what about the people caught in the middle of all this? What about the people of Tigray who are just trying to live their lives? It's easy to forget about them, isn't it? When you're talking about all this high-level politics, we kind of forget that there are actual people living through this chaos.
It's like we're talking about chess pieces, but these are real lives, you know?
Yeah.
People who've already survived a war.
Right, trying to rebuild, and now this power struggle.
It's like, what do you do? Who do you turn to? I mean, we're talking about basic needs here. Food, water, medicine. If you don't know who's in charge, it's got to be incredibly difficult just to survive day to day.
And does the international community, do they have a role here? Can they actually make a difference?
I think so, yeah. Of course, humanitarian aid is essential, but they can also use their influence, put pressure on all sides to come to some kind of agreement.
So there's a chance, maybe, for things to...
Calm down a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you see any reason for optimism?
Well, the Tigrayan people are incredibly resilient. They've been through so much, and they always find a way to come together. You know, sometimes it's in those really dark moments that you see the best of humanity.
So maybe that's what gives us hope.
I think so, yeah. The human spirit, it's a powerful thing.
This has been a really fascinating but really sobering deep dive.
It really makes you think.
It does. We've covered a lot of ground here. The TPLF's rise and fall, this power struggle, the impact on the people of Tigray.
And how it fits into the bigger picture, right? This isn't just about Tigray. This is about the future of Ethiopia.
Exactly. And that's something for all of us to think about. To our listeners, thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this is giving you some food for thought.
And maybe inspired you to learn more.